a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. Ah, Robert Frost. And as we're all coming in today, December 8th, it's dusting of snow. It's just wonderful out there. And Gemma in Guilford on Zoom is she's getting her first dust of snow too. Here we are. Oh, I love that little poem. So, Gemma Mathewson and I are here again to offer you a celebration of family and a Christmas themed show, holiday generally. All denominations, all persuasions. And we want to celebrate with you today. We want to bring in that joy and also love and understanding that comes with the season. Oh, Gemma, I'm so happy you're here with me.
Well, I'm happy to be there via Zoom.
And again, I love your hat this time.
Yeah, I had a bunch of different ones for the grandchildren when they come for Christmas, and we have some Santas, some elves.
Well,
reindeer, all the props.
It's the elfish hat of the year. I haven't seen that before. It's got a wonderful back flap.
Yeah, it has first a little dangly bit.
Oh, perfect. I love your tree. Thank you. It's just
you're welcome.
So lit up,
Yeah, I sit in the other room in front of my computer, but this, for the holidays.
Oh, yeah. And the situation of the picture is just perfect. So welcome, and let's celebrate.
Let's.
What are you feeling?
I have been having so much fun researching your little challenge of home and family and holidays and, closeness with family members and memories. Yeah. And I came across this poem in an anthology called Best American Poetry of 2019. And it's by a poet named Catherine Barnett. And it celebrates all of those things. So I thought it would be a fun one to maybe start with. And then we can go in many directions. This is called Central Park. And the only thing in it that I didn't understand was she refers to something called Golden Bright, which is a remote-controlled toy boat. So this is about her, the poet, and her family, called Central Park. I'd like to buy one when I die, one of the benches, not yet spoken for, not yet tagged with a small stainless plaque and someone else's name. If they're all gone, please help me carry a replica to the boat pond so I can sit and watch the model boats go nowhere beautifully, rented by the fixed hours. I'm grateful not to be out of yet, at another flicker of love, an updated AAA membership, and a handful of Pilot G-Tech C4 blue-black pens. What else do I need? Universe, watch over us. Boat, my poor faraway father says, as if my mother had never seen one. Boat, he says again, and we say, yes, aren't they beautiful? Come winter, the boathouse here is locked up, the pond drained. Except for 1 year it wasn't. And my son and I convinced ourselves his new Golden Bright could sail straight across. Merry Christmas, no one said, as I pulled the black plastic liner bags from the empty trash cans and stepped into them, one for each leg, and waded into that addled water to salvage his present. I think that moment is something to remember, or something to remember me by. Brief, vivid, foolhardy, even the revenants watching from the line of benches said so. Thus have been our travels. Oblivion, they said, there's no unenduring it.
Oh,
I like how the mother makes herself the hero of her own story. And it's so vivid, her pulling on those trash bags to get her son's boat that, didn't make it across Central Park.
oh, it's delightful. And she deserves a bench in her name. Yes, as a mother who so, diligently works with her son to evoke a feeling. It's a wonderful feeling because the poem brings in New York City, Central Park, this time of year, and the really wonderful experience of, they didn't drain the pond this year.
Yeah.
Oh,
And her parents, a father who is obviously struggling with memory problems, and how she sees the other benches that have plaques on them as having revenants of other people looking on while she does this. I think that's just such a nice feeling, all the spirits of Christmas past.
and it's so delicately done. The quality of the poem is amazing to me because of it just brought me in almost in a surreal way, right into that scene where I was there and kind of living it. But that's what a lively poet really can do with language. It's the black trash bags coming up the leg that are really
Yeah, right.
wonderful image, and what a mother to go in waiting. Oh, that brings me up a little vignette about parents' love and nurturance, and that's a key term, nurturance. I've been thinking a lot about nature and nurture, but Monday I was just stopping for some cat litter in Walmart in Guilford, in your town, and I saw this 4-minute interaction with a father and a son, age 4.
Oh,
And he's sitting in the cart, and the son is so engaged in what the father is doing, who's taking infinite patience with his son in the most nurturing way I could just imagine, in the middle of a holiday beginning rush. And the son said, I wanted to put the Christmas paper into the cart after the father had taken it off the counter, put it in. So the father picked it up out of the cart and turned and gave it to his son to do that gesture of, almost like your sister with the creche scene, right?
right.
I want to do that. And it brings out a parent's appreciation, love, affirmation. Let's celebrate that. You've got that wonderful poem there doing that and acknowledging, see me, the child is saying, right?
Yeah, right.
How wonderful.
And wanting to be useful, wanting to be part of the process that they're within. He's sitting right there with the father while the father's doing it. He wants to be part of it too.
And that's so heartwarming because the father is taking the pains willingly, joyfully, showing it on his face. And then the son leans over for a kiss, and the father kisses him on the forehead. And, it's just, I think, a perfect vignette of a 4-year-old in the process of...
Frank, that's your next poem.
Thank you very much.
Write it.
It goes very deep there, you know? And I sat back and said, why am I noticing these things? Well, there's a memory, a need, a want, but a desire to share that with our audience who really can resonate with this too. I mean, we're really in the business of sharing the joy that we can pass on. That's a big one. That early nurturance. And nature plays a part, but it's so much fun to see, as your background tells you all this and your experience, how wonderful to observe it. The poets, that's who are helping us.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Have to take a pause and a breath after that. The feelings went so deep. And how about your own memories and thoughts? And
Oh gosh. Well, my own memories of Christmas Eve, that was the big holiday for us because it was an Italian American family, and that's what we celebrated more than Christmas Day. And I had two aunts that lived next door to each other, and we would go to one house for dinner and then the other house for dessert. And in between, one of my aunt's son got married and lived there with his wife. So we started going to the three different houses, and it was a movable feast. And we had, the 9 fishes that the Italians have. That's a tradition. But it was full of family and, a lot of teasing and everybody speaking at once, but everybody also got heard, and the children always got heard. We were always part of the experience.
oh, that's a beautiful thought and scene.
I had memories of that,
The children being heard
Yeah,
and paid attention to and included in
Absolutely.
that nurturing way.
yeah.
So did you range far and wide with your investigation of poets and poems for families celebration? Who did you trip over?
I tripped over another one, and this is something that my daughter had told me recently.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if it's so much about, well, it is about families because it's about a bond, as you say, that's nurture, but this also brings in nature. And my daughter pointed this out to me. She said, she said, think about, and I guess I knew it on some level because it's a fact. When a girl child is gestated in a mother's womb, she carries all the eggs. She's born with all the eggs she'll ever need to have her own children. And so the grandmother actually carries the eggs of her grandchildren in her, way before those grandchildren are born. And I thought, what a beautiful thing. I had never thought of that before. And Maxine Kumin wrote a poem about that.
Oh, I like her.
Yeah. It's called The Envelope. It is true. Martin Heidegger, as you have written, I fear to cease, even knowing that at the hour of my death, my daughters will absorb me, even knowing they will carry me about forever, inside them, an arrested fetus, even as I carried the ghost of my mother under my navel, a nervy little androgynous person, a miracle folded into lotus position. Like those old pear-shaped Russian dolls that open at the middle to reveal another and another down to the pea-sized, irreducible minimum. May we carry our mothers forth in our bellies. May we, borne onward by our daughters, ride in the envelope of almost infinity, that chain letter, good for the next 25,000 days of our lives.
Wow. Maxine read in New Haven. a few years ago at the arts celebration. Arts
I
and
don't know.
Arts and Ideas. Did you see her?
No, I didn't see her. I didn't see her that time.
She's a shorter, trim woman, and really good at spoken word. I actually bought her book for a friend, and it brings me to actually remembering some of her imagery. How I love the nesting dolls, the
Yeah.
Russian. Oh, that is just so brilliant. And also the other analogies she's brought in there, and her sound. You know, I'm paying more attention to the sound of spoken
Yeah.
word. And I think I remember what she sounded like on the stage there at the Lincoln Theater in New Haven when she did a reading. I actually approached her, and it was delightful to meet a poet
Oh,
recognized up front, face to face, and just give a few kudos and also tell her how deeply I was touched by her words. Have you any memories of poets gone by, or poets that you have run into, or been in an audience listening
well,
to?
you know, I do have a memory of one of the poets that you sent me some poems to check over to see if I wanted to read. Excuse me. I just knocked one over. And one of them was Marilyn Nelson. And I have to say, the exact poem that you said, like this one, How I Discovered Poetry, she read it at Poetry Institute when I was co-host with Mark, and hopefully will again be someday.
I remember I was there. I
Yeah.
was so touched with that.
Yeah, and she read this poem, and she did reflect on, you know, what it was like to be a child and to be really humiliated in this way. I mean, it's not a feel-good poem, but she was able to come out on the other side of it and love poetry, which I think is her way of saying, yes, I love poetry, and even though this happened to me, here I am writing, you know, being able to write about it. So, shall I just read it now? Otherwise, this makes no sense without the context.
Oh, I'm so happy you brought it up, because that's really a good way we can transition a little later. So it's grist for the mill. It's just wonderful if you could read it now.
Okay. It's called, okay, so Marilyn Nelson is an African-American woman, and she writes just, did she have puppets when she was reading that night?
Yes.
She decided to use puppets in some of her.
Yes. Oh, it
Yeah.
was brilliant.
She's very creative, very large-hearted, and just so giving. You can tell just by her demeanor.
Motherly.
This
Yeah.
is her poem, How I Discovered Poetry. It was like soul kissing, the way the words filled my mouth as Mrs. Purdy read from her desk. All the other kids zoned an hour ahead to 3:15, but Mrs. Purdy and I wandered lonely as clouds, borne by a breeze off Mount Parnassus. She must have seen the dark eyes in the room brim. The next day, she gave me a poem she'd chosen especially for me to read to the all except for me white class. She smiled when she told me to read it. She smiled harder and said, oh, yes, I could. She smiled harder and harder, and I stood and opened my mouth to banjo playing, darkies, pickaninnies, disses, and dats. When I finished, my classmates stared at the floor. We walk silent to the buses, awed by the power of words. So she's talking about the power of words, but not in a positive way. And yet here's a woman who has been using the power of words ever since in writing powerful poetry, some in celebration, but this one in vindication of her own bravery when forced to be humiliated by the teacher just for loving poetry. It's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling. It's transition, it's transformation, and she's playing with a little dramatic irony there in such a wonderful way. That's just a brilliant use of it.
Yes, the irony is in the title, How I Discovered Poetry. She discovered poetry.
Oh my, a few levels there. Oh, it's just beautiful of irony. And she's also poet laureate, right, of Connecticut?
Yeah, she has been. I don't know the timeline.
Yeah, she was, and popular, and just wonderful to have that night. Could you put in a little plug about that institute that would be nice to go back to in person?
Yeah, the Institute Library is in New Haven, and it's been there since I think the 1840s or thereabouts.
Yes, yes.
But anyway, Mark McGuire Schwartz was the one of the founders of the Poetry Institute, which is independent of the Institute Library, but they have been hosting their space for us to be there. And I had been a co-host with Mark, but since the pandemic, we just don't feel it's right now for us to go up into that space. But we have been having online zines, the PI magazine. And when we run the next one, I'll give you dates and let you know so anybody who wants to submit to it can to be in the Poetry Institute magazine. So that's what we're doing for now.
Oh, I'd love that because, we're getting a following, our art of poetry with you and me, and I can put that out, and it's just a wonderful memory for me to have attended those.
Yeah.
I was so touched with your reading of Marilyn Nelson's poem. Can I ask you to read that again? Because there are a couple of other images that she uses really well.
Okay, I'll try. How I Discovered Poetry by Marilyn Nelson. It was like soul kissing, the way the words filled my mouth as Mrs. Purdy read from her desk. All the other kids zoned an hour ahead to 3:15, but Mrs. Purdy and I wandered lonely as clouds, borne by a breeze off Mount Parnassus. She must have seen the dark eyes in the room brim, the darkest eyes in the room brim. The next day, she gave me a poem she'd chosen especially for me to read to the all except for me white class. She smiled when she told me to read it. She smiled harder and said, "Oh, yes, I could." She smiled harder and harder until I stood and opened my mouth to banjo-playing darkies, pickaninnies, disses, and dats. When I finished, my classmates stared at the floor. We walked silent to the buses, awed by the power of words. So what I'm noticing in it this time, and of course I want your reaction, but what I'm noting this time is her classmates felt some shame for her that the teacher would humiliate her in that way. They stared at the floor and they were they were silent because I would imagine students going home, would be all busy and talking with each other, as they usually are, but something about them had been disturbed. So that was,
that embarrassed silence for others, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, in a way, Marilyn has a little chuckle too, because she says, lonely as clouds, which is, the allusion to Shakespeare. We wandered lonely as clouds. But it's also sort of a vicious, ironic pun in a way. Mm-hmm. And it's something that she has total command of in that poem. And it's definitely transforming it, the experience.
Yes.
Parnassus. Who lives on Parnassus, Mm-hmm. Well, the gods, the poets, mm-hmm. What a privilege to meet someone like Marilyn Nelson, who lays it out, just says it, and points out the sadness and the cruelty that's also out there, So thank God for the changing seasons and the celebrations of kindness and joy, because, as you say, here comes Marilyn Nelson.
That's right.
Oh, wow. And who else strikes your chord?
Well, I'm kind of running out here, but that's okay. So this is setting up a little vignette. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years back, I went to see, with Doug, at the Bronx Botanical Gardens, we went to see a Frida Kahlo exhibit of what her garden looked like and where she painted, and recreation. And it was beautiful. And there were some of her artwork there, but not a lot, because it was basically about gardens. But they chose some beautiful paintings to look at too. But out in the gardens where you walked around, there were poems by a man named Octavio Paz. And I'd never heard of him before, and he is a Mexican poet who, I think he died in 2014. And I really loved the selections, the pieces of the poems, as I went there with the expectation to see art and to see beautiful botanical creations, and then I got so caught up in the poetry that I wandered around and I kept reading his works. And I thought this poem spoke to me because it's about a couple. So again, it's about a family, and their obvious love for each other. But it's also about how, especially at the end of the year, one year ends and the next year begins, you're thinking of making plans and reviewing the past. So that's why I like this one.
We're going to hold that for after break.
Okay.
And we're going to go to a short break. And that's a great introduction and carryover, too. We'll get back to you right away. Thanks.
Okay, Greg. Sounds good.
People ask me, is it hard to figure out if I should get tested for coronavirus? Well, as a professor, I love giving a pop quiz. Are you experiencing fever, chills, cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, or body ache? Well, then coronavirus testing is available without a referral, and it's the best way to protect yourself and your family. It actually reminds me of Plato, who once said, "The price good men pay." Okay, I deserve that.
Valley Shore Community Television is constantly adapting to the demands of our viewers. Busy schedules are making it hard for viewers to watch shows when they air.
television has changed dramatically. We don't have to be appointment viewers or listeners anymore.
No.
We can do this in real time.
VSC TV has made it easy to watch all our locally produced content online and when you want it. Visit vsctv.com and click on the Watch Online tab to watch live, or visit our local show playlist to easily navigate your favorite shows anywhere, anytime, and on any device.
The way to this world is for free. Freedom from the ways of this.
VSC TV is your local Connecticut Mid-Shore Valley digital connection.
My kids put skis on as they were learning to walk. I want my kids to be able to have those moments with their kids. Being a scientist, I'm worried about climate change in so many different ways for my kids. From the second you have a child, you want to do everything to protect them. I think our action on climate change is no different. It's just an extension of being a mom.
The innocence of youth. Is there anything any better? But soon they'll be in high school and facing all the same challenges you faced. How to make friends, how to fit in, how to be cool. We want our children to have everything they'll need to live fulfilling and productive lives. Make sure the kids in your family are among the more than 170,000 participants here in Connecticut who take part in high school sports or activities.
Hey world, I have a quick message. It's about safe driving. All right, let's go. Anytime you're driving, have the seatbelt buckled tight. Both hands on the wheel and your phone out of sight. When not in your hand trying to text somebody back. Because if you do, your car might get smacked. The moral of the story, just put your phone down. The people on the road will stay safe and sound. Put your phone down, put your phone down. People on the road will stay safe and sound. Yeah.
Oh, those service announcements were brilliant. Oh, thank you, Chris. That really hits the family button in such a beautiful way. And Gemma, we decided to hold off on Robert Hayden until we'll bring Marilyn and Robert back later. But you and I have spent a lot of time talking about Frida Kahlo over several months, you know. A mention here, a mention there, and you told me about this experience, and I was dying to get some more. Wow! So there you were.
So this is a poem by Octavio Paz. And his pieces of his poems were featured all around that exhibit of Frida Kahlo. This one's called January 1st, which is why I thought would be appropriate. The year's doors open like those of language toward the unknown. Last night you told me, tomorrow we shall have to think up signs, sketch a landscape, fabricate a plan on the double page of day and paper. Tomorrow, we shall have to invent once more the reality of this world. I opened my eyes late. For a second, I felt what the Aztec felt on the crest of the promontory, lying in wait for time's uncertain return through cracks in the horizon. But no, the year had returned. It filled all the room, and my look almost touched it. Time, with no help from us, had placed in exactly the same order as yesterday, houses in the empty street, snow on the houses, and silence on the snow. You were beside me, still asleep. The day had invented you, but you hadn't yet accepted being invented by the day. Nor possibly my being invented either. You were in another day. You were beside me, and I saw you like the snow, asleep among appearances. time, with no help from us, invents houses, streets, trees, and sleeping women. When you open your eyes, we'll walk once more among the hours and their inventions. We'll walk among appearances and bear witness to time and its conjugations. Perhaps we'll open the day's doors, and then we shall enter the unknown.
Oh, the conjugation of time. And that Roman god Janus, he was interesting. He was facing in two directions.
And the Aztec, I believe, I think this was more of a solstice thing than a January 1st thing, but the Aztecs would wait for the sun to come up again, at the beginning of the solstice, the winter solstice, and they had a whole spiritual ritual around that experience. So that's how he brings that Mexican history or tradition into his thing. But I like the way he talks about the woman who has her plans for the next year, and they're going to write up their plans and they're going to do it. And he's like, and then, next year happens and it's all happening anyway. What's going to happen is going to happen. It's sort of like a poem of appreciation for her, but also an acceptance that things are maybe a little bit different than that sometimes.
Yeah, a little discordance too, but how wonderful that the solstice in imagery played such a big part in that ancient Indian ritual, and also the feeling of the stars controlling life.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
The cosmic aspect of plans being set in their own wheels of machinery.
That's right, the wheels. Well, what a wonderful painter she was, and I think I shared something about an exhibit. Yes, it was Murray, an Hungarian journalist, photojournalist, who took a lot of her still shots. What a distinctive face and wonderful Mexican culture she really evoked in her art. It's so so interesting in a way that you have gone down this path for a moment, because I wanted to mention, although I won't read any of her poetry, I may have sent you a Xerox copy of The Disappeared.
I think so. I don't know if I have that one with me. But yes, go ahead.
She wrote a book, which I got from the University of Connecticut, and they're generously loaning it me for 2 months. So I think we'll get into it, I hope so. The Art and Poetry of Cecilia Vicuña. It's that a little thing over the end, the precarious. But it's fascinating how if you hold the book one way, the first half is her poetry. And then if you flip the book over in the most interesting way, it's an entirely different book of her visual art. And she works in threads and colors. And she was draping these all over the most interesting places in Chile as a remembrance to the disappeared. And this is a reference to the 70s.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Oh, so deeply evocative in her work. But I thought, oh, what a clever design. I've never seen a book of poetry.
I think you mentioned it, and you may have sent me a poem, but I don't seem to have it around at this point.
That's okay. It's just a wonderful tease for next time,
Yes,
because
absolutely. I'd like to do
The
that.
Disappeared is a poem about remembering all the families that lost loved ones to the political violence in Chile
Yeah.
in the 70s. And I'd love to come back someday to that with you.
Okay. I might be able to find my photos that I took of retablos. There were retablos in the Museum of Folk Art in New Mexico, which there was a whole series depicting all the atrocities at that.
You know, that brings back some memories of Kingston, New York, and the coffee shops that these immigrants were able to establish for themselves, and they used all that disappeared art with names and faces on the local coffee shop, you know. And I think having discovered Cecilia, I'm appreciating the terrors that came with that in a way. So really, at this time of the year, it's also important to, as we did last time, move from hard times to good poems to help us, you know.
I agree.
So here we are at the end of the year. The show will be on locally every Monday night at 8 o'clock for Channel 19, Valley Shore Community TV, which is a real service for the 9 towns. So every Monday night, people can actually come in and look at a rerun. Now, where shall we go from here? Let's go to Robert Hayden.
Yes, please.
Oh, wow. This sings. This is a good poem for hard times, and it evokes some of the imagery Marilyn Nelson did. So we are queued up beautifully because, you know, it brings Marilyn back into the picture and African-American poetry. And some of the struggles are highlighted, illuminated in both their words. But this poem touched my heart universally. It was, you know, what did I know? What did I know of love's austere devotion in family?
Here is a poem that comes directly out of my boyhood in Detroit, and it's called Those Winter Sundays. Sundays, too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then, with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather, made bank fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the coal splintering breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house, speaking indifferently to him who had driven out the coal, and polish my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices?
Why does this poem always bring tears to my eyes?
Oh.
It's so touching in terms of a young boy's unawareness reflected back on when he's older, beginning to appreciate what his parents did for him in their devotion and love and nurturance. What did I know at that time? Father got up in the blue-black cold. What wonderful sound imagery in this poem, too. And it's also a cultural bound poem. A very, very feeling poem. I love his voice, Robert Hayden reading for us. reminds me of Marilyn Nelson and her performance.
His voice feels like it's reading from the memory. He's still within the memory as he's talking about it. It is powerful. That's, I think, why it brings tears to your eyes.
He's refeeling it. He's reliving it through his voice. Yeah, and his voice is so mellow too. It's a wonderful caressing sound in his tone. What else does this bring up for you? Any memories of Christmas past? We've talked about, the ghost of Christmas future. And this is the moment, I think, for that wonderful pivot of, oh, what a difference nurturing makes in the life of a child.
That's true. Well, I think you remember my poem that I wrote called The Nylon Stocking Angel, and here's my nylon stocking angel. Whoops. I'm in the wrong.
Yes.
I read it before, so I won't read it again, but that's the memory for me, is when my mother, I had a craft book, and my mother didn't like me to do crafts because they were messy, but she actually indulged me by, try to make this go in by using, this is her nylon stocking, was probably, had a few rips in it, and some wire to make the angel's wings and dress. And she sat there with me to do this messy craft, because you can't really tell, but there was some sprinkly angel dust on the wings, like sparklies. And it looks like, just gray, gray dust now, but it was very sparkly when I was a child. And I was so thrilled that she sat and did it with me, because most of the time I was not allowed to make messes. I could draw pictures, but I so wanted to do crafts. And I kept it all these years. I mean, this probably 66 years ago.
Oh my goodness, that's a memory, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you. Those little objects from Christmas long ago, that ghost of Christmas past,
right.
can bring up to our attention. Anything else about your mother around the holidays you remember? Any of the cooking?
Well, my mother, she was a strange woman, but every year, she said this later, she would break a Christmas ball so that if we broke a ball, she would pretend that she fumbled and dropped it, so that if we broke a Christmas ball, we wouldn't feel embarrassed. And I don't know if this story is true, but that's what she told us, that every year she broke a Christmas ball near the beginning of us decorating the tree, so that if we broke a ball, it would be okay. We wouldn't feel bad about it.
Oh, what a cushion. Oh, what a protection.
Yeah.
Oh, what a nurturing. You've described a little.
It was nurturing, but it was also typical of her strategy. It wasn't direct. She didn't say, oh, don't worry if you break a ball, it's okay. She'd do something dishonest to make you feel better or something like that. Wasn't exactly the truth. You got a lot of stories.
Aha. Good enough parenting, right? Winnicott. Winnicott. Oh, yeah. And I remember that book, Bowlby, Good Enough Mothering. How important.
You have any memories about your childhood?
Thanks. I'm still stuck in that moment of awe and magic and almost transcendence at age 7, when my mother brought my sister, 4 years younger, and I up, and I Come on, say the objective case, Frank. Brought my mother and me up the escalator to the 10th floor of G. Fox and Company, the center of Connecticut living around Christmas.
Oh my goodness.
There was the animated orchestra cowboy at the top of right at the top of the escalated stairs at the 10th floor where they just performed, and I was 7, and my imagination just ran into a kind of glorious childhood world where, there was no death, there was no sorrow, there was no pain, there was no, Christmas past, present, or the possibilities of a bad Christmas future. So, with the ghost of Christmas future, we're on the cusp. Mothers, love your children. Take the moment, as Gemma's been describing, to do something. Time out. Hold off. Look into the child's eyes. Bring that child to you. The service announcements did it beautifully.
That's true.
Oh, yes, we're down to 3 minutes. And fathers, be that man in Walmart Monday with your 4-year-old son or your 8-year-old son or your 28-year-old son. Take the moment. I finally took my dad out for a beer when I was 32, and I said, "Gee, Dad, I've never said it, but I love you." And he looked at me, he said, "Don't you think I know that?" But our generation never said the words. Say the words. Share the love. Push it into the future coming, because it's a message of the season that from the manger, the Christ child, it is the nurturing. It is the time of quality that we take with our children. And it feels so good to say that, because I'm feeling my pain and loss and, all the things that came with the past. But so somehow at 80, I'm just in a place where that's okay. The letting go and the surrender is really working for me this season. How about you?
Well, I'm trying to get to that place, and I don't know that I'm there yet, Frank, but I'm enjoying things differently as time goes on too.
I'm so glad to hear that, and thanks for sharing that openness, because really this show has a gift of being open-hearted. We're learning to see with the eyes of the heart, as my buddy Woody Wilkins says, working with dying children in hospitals, doing woodwork. Yep.
That's Emily.
Emily, thank you for your appearance. Yeah. Emily Dickinson, the cat that never stops talking.
Yeah, I have Emily and Frida, so either way.
And I'm taking a lesson from Finn, my cat, who's been at my side with 10 days of prednisone. So if I seemed a little spacey, I apologize today. But synchronicity and trusting Gemma, how that all came together.
It does.
Seamlessly, artfully, with the help of our technical staff. Oh, again, this is the most satisfying show I've done yet. With you, of course, because you're here. So we're ready to do a wrap. And Gemma, I'm so happy to share this with you, because it's just such a warm feeling to send it out on the air.
It's great to be with you, Frank, and it's great to share our memories and hope and love of family and moments we can share.
Hope and love of family. Thank you for leaving me with that. And here we go. I love this camera, and Max is lifting us up.
Well, see.